Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on the first few episodes of the anime series Recreators, which is one that I've been really fascinated by. I've been talking about it loosely a little bit over on my Facebook page, and this video has largely been prompted by a recent video uploaded by a fellow YouTuber whose channel name I hope I'm not going to butcher here. I believe it is Kyoyaxcloud or Kyoyaxcloud. I will be linking her video in the description below to send my modest viewership, my friends and peers who watch my videos. You know, go check her out and see if you like what you hear, because the thing I'm very much impressed by with her particular way of, doing her videos is the informality with which she discusses anime. She's very knowledgeable about anime. She talks about different series that she and her boyfriend both watch and go back and forth about, or animes that are singularly her own interest, and she has a backlog of familiarity that she makes comparisons and contrasts to that I'm even not largely necessarily familiar with, whether it's outside my circle of interest or it's just things I haven't gotten to. And I'm always fascinated to hear things like that, because I'm usually very much open to recommendation and not guaranteeing that I'll necessarily have interest in something that you have interest in, but I'm willing to give it a shot in most cases. And so I really like the genial, sort of straightforward way she talks about anime and the informality with which she does, very much like I kind of fancy myself doing on YouTube. I turn on my smartphone camera, I just sit down and start shooting the crap with you, my friends, my peers. I'm not talking at you as though you are an audience. I'm not trying to be some kind of entertainment form, that kind of thing. I'm not like a show. I'm not a caricature or anything like that. I do intro my videos. I'm introducing myself to you every video, and for first-time viewers and such like that. But there is that informality. I'm just talking to friends and peers, not an audience. And she has that way about her in the way she presents herself in videos and such like that as well. And so I want to give her kind of a shout out, send people her way. Maybe you'll dig her approach to it as well. And but her video reminded me largely of just how intrigued I've been and fascinated I've been with this series Recreators. And I really I feel it would be irresponsible to not come on and talk about it in some way. I don't want to be repeating everything she said as well. That's another thing. Watch her video as well as this one and gauge for yourself whether it's something you might want to check out if you haven't already, or if you already have, welcome to the club kind of thing. But the thing that's fascinating about this particular series is it kind of bends that typical anime genre or trope where you have a cat, usually it's a cat. I don't think I've ever seen a series where it's a female character who is suddenly transported to an RPG fantasy sort of environment. You think of things like Konosuba, ReZero, in certain ways, things like SAO, and whereas that was characters logging in, but they got trapped and they had to sort of exist in that environment by force and things of that nature. This really takes that whole genre and flips it on its ear, because what's happening, you're following around a sort of wannabe mangaka who has lost his will to pursue that as a career. He's kind of fallen out of love, with it, failure after failure, not quite realizing his talents or what he wants to do with those talents. And, basically it happens in like the first episode. He is suddenly transported temporarily into an anime that is currently like unfolding on his TV or computer screen, whatever it is, where he is saved by this sort of heroic warrior woman by the name of Celestia, who is one of the other main characters. And in being freed, whisked back out of it again, does he find he's able to transport her along with him into our real world. And this ends up happening with a whole bunch of different characters, some of which we haven't even been introduced yet by I think, third episode was the most recent that aired. You have Celestia, who is, as I say, the warrior chick, who's an anime and manga character, or light novel character, and she's literally pulled out from an episode amidst a battle with a mysterious villain that you're not sure, is she part of that show that Celestia was a part of? You find out later, no, she wasn't. She can somehow transport between the realms or the worlds or whatever you want to call it. And she is the chief antagonist thus far. this chick, I forget what her name is. It's like a strange name, if they've even name dropped it. I know I saw it in the listing on my anime list, but she's kind of like got gray hair, I think it is, and like a very militaristic outfit. And again, I don't remember if they actually name dropped her or not, but she is an enigma so far. She's a mystery, this antagonist. She's the only one who seems at first to know what's going on with characters who are able to be pulled out of their respective anime, manga, whatever they are, these different genres of fiction. And it seems like she has a personal association with the main character, Sota, the as I say, wannabe mangaka and everything like that. And so he's very much taken aback at first by this character who is sword wielding and, like going back and forth, verbally jousting as much as wanting to beat the hell out of this militaristic uniformed girl, trying to understand what has happened. She feels like some level of sorcery has befallen her, and she has a mecha that is like her personal guard or something like that she has spent a lot of time with, and there's a whole genre story arc from the anime that she hails from within this anime, Recreators itself, which they talk about here and there, and it's quite fascinating. They are then introduced to another character, Meteora, who seems to be sort of a healer mage of a more typical sort of RPG fantasy anime, and these two come together with Sota to really sort of try to put their brains at work, try to put their heads together and figure out what the hell is going on here. Fictional characters are bleeding into the real, air quotes, world. And that is very much the premise of the series. Recreators sees fictional manga and anime characters being brought out of their respective titles and into our real world. And it seems very intriguing that it's characters who have some love or fascination, fan following in our real world. So there is somewhat of a unique perspective for each of them. They are very fan beloved. They have strong followings and everything. There's an association and a familiarity in our real world with these characters in these fictional anime and manga, titles that exist within this particular series. And they each seem to conform to a particular kind of anime genre. You have the warrior woman that is Celestia. You have the sort of healer mage from an RPG sort of anime, fantasy anime that is Meteora. You're introduced to this cat who's kind of like a Yakuza gangster kind of guy. He's described thusly by himself, self-described as the final boss in his respective anime, like the final villain, the antagonist that the main character in his respective anime would have to go up against before completing the story, whatever that story is. And he has a very devil-may-care sort of like, he quotes Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop in saying, whatever happens, happens. Like, I don't really care. I'm not too chuffed up about this new environment I'm in. I kind of wish some of my friends from back home, in a sense, the anime he hails from, were there with them to experience it, and he's kind of intrigued by what's going on, that he has been plucked out of this fictional anime scenario, but whereas other characters are very much concerned and wanting to figure out what the hell is going on and what the purposes of this militaristic army fatigues wearing girl is that seems to have maybe propelled this to happen. The one with the links to Sota himself, the main character, this guy Yuya, he's very much the Yakuza sort of framework, and just he doesn't really care. He's just kind of going to make the best of things. He's enjoying the food and everything like that. And so it's really intriguing, that aspect of it. The clash, so to speak, of these different genre trope stylized characters. There is a magical girl that very much looks like Madoka from Madoka Magica. And she's very prim and proper in her approach. Like she tries to fend off Celestia at one point, and she's very shocked by the fact that her beating the hell out of Celestia is, blood is getting everywhere and everything like that, because in her own sort of respective anime, there isn't any of that. There isn't any gore or anything. Any sort of violence is tapered back and edited and that kind of thing. And it's more kid-friendly, child-friendly as per her show's audience. And so she's really stark in her reaction, her incredulity to that, because it's like, there's blood everywhere. You know, there are consequences for my being violent in this world. What is going on? And so that's it. The mashup of characters being sort of calm and reserved, but wanting to intellectually figure this out, is clashing with other characters who are much more paranoid and sort of uppity and like, what's going on? What's going on in this world? You know, and then you have a character like Yuya who's just like, whatever, you know, pass me a piece of pizza, that kind of thing. And it's all fascinating in that also there are going to be characters we've seen teased in the OP. There's kind of like a vampire type chick, maybe it's a chick, I'm just guessing. I'm taking, you know, a stab at it there. I don't really know. We haven't been introduced to these characters yet. There is a sort of like mecha pilot, Eva pilot. It reminds me of one of the characters from Evangelion, who looks like he's probably a young dude, and he's got sort of like the suits they wear when they're going to be piloting a giant mecha like an Eva. You have this very sort of noirish detective looking guy that reminds me of something out of like Psycho-Pass. And we see him shooting off a gun. You know, I don't know who's shooting it off at. You know, I don't know if he hails from the same anime title that the Yuya character does, the Yakuza dude, or if it's a more detective mystery sort of genre anime, whatever it is. There is another warrior woman who actually comes in and swoops in on horseback and saves the magical girl who looks like Madoka from Madoka Magica, who very much kind of embodies to me darkness from Konosuba. You know, like her build, her color motif, and everything like that. And we really don't know. The jury's still kind of out on her, what her you know, jive on all of this is, what her feeling and vibes are on all of this. But she saves the magical girl when the magical girl's having a breakdown about, oh my god, there's blood and gore, you know, I'm not used to this. Again, consequences for my violent actions. And it's very much born out of the debate, what are we going to do? We're in the world of the gods, for all intents and purposes. As far as they are aware, they have been taken out of their respective fantasy worlds, these fictional environs, and they understand that. They're cognizant of the fact that they don't really exist, or they shouldn't. They're characters in a medium of fiction, and thusly in the world they now inhabit, that they've been whisked out of their fictional worlds and entered, there are the gods. They're creators, the people who have written and drawn them and created animes based around them and things of that nature. And maybe there's a way of manipulating that. The curiosity in them, all whether violently so, paranoid so, or intellectually so, is, might we be able to commune with the people who created us, and then perhaps thusly manipulate the world we left behind, that we were taken out of, plucked out of. Whether that be, you know, changing the actual story and the focus of their respective fictional embodiments, whether that be trying to change them fundamentally as the characters they are, which as of, I think it's the third episode, the most recent, do we find that that's not seemingly going to work, especially for these characters who have such a familiarity with a fan base and a following and a sort of, you know, predisposition for what kind of character they are, who they are, what they've achieved, what they're capable of. Things so fundamental that they cannot just be changed by getting an author to rewrite a scene or write a specific scene, as we see, get an artist to come in and embody that, you know, in a drawing. These things are not going to suddenly then, you know, blossom with light and magical vistas and change the format of the personage of this character in the real world. But there are still characters like this militaristic, soldier-esque, you know, antagonist who believe that somehow, some way, that is a viable thing, that they can bring that about. But because she seems so familiar with the main character, Sota, you're kind of like, what's that about? Why does she have this familiarity? She's talking to herself in like the final scene of the latest episode. At least I think she's talking to herself. I don't remember if we saw anyone else. We saw somebody eavesdropping. I think it was the magical girl. But she seems to be having a one-sided conversation, but with someone. She's projecting as though she's talking to someone about her familiarity with Sota and what can they do about that, you know, his involvement with things. He's just inadvertently involved because he happened to be watching an anime that pulled one of these characters out, the warrior Celestia. And then again, as I say, introduced to Meteora, and we find out that the anime character designer for Celestia's anime is going to harbor both she and Meteora. She's going to give them both a roof over their heads, whereas they've been staying with Sota up until that point. And really, it's just fictional characters taken out of these different works of fiction, manga and anime, brought into our real world, and they're trying to understand how they can get back to their respective worlds and whether or not they can cause any sort of manipulation to those worlds if they approach their creators, their gods, in our own world. One of the things they were trying to do with Celestia is give her more power, and rewriting her character bio and then creating a portrait of her with this newly found ability didn't work. And I think the reason it might not have worked is largely because of that preconception of that character, as well as the fact that is, in any case, their speculation, but as well as the fact that you can't undo the public perception with a drawing you're doing in a closed space by yourself. Even though it's Sota, it's Celestia, it's an artist, you know, an anime character designer, and the original character creator, they're all working toward this effort together to see if they can force a manipulation of Celestia. It's being done privately. It's not being done on like a telecast. It's not an official production. And so I would venture to speculate that if it's not official, if it's not being seen by the populace, it's something that cannot be achieved. So they may find that they have to put into production like an OVA that tells a different story and then recreates the character or the world or the environment, or reopens the portal that sucked them out of their respective fantasy worlds and can put them back into it. And that is essentially the sort of crux of the creation of this series. You know, what would cognizant, intellectual, you know, characters with their own beings and presence of mind and souls do if plucked out of these fictional stories and brought into our real world? How would they react to that? What would they try to pursue a way to get back home? Would they want to pervert the world they came from, or pervert their own existence? Or would they want to stay here and just jive and hang out and eat food like Yuya? You know, it's all highly intriguing. And I've really been fascinated by that tack, that story approach. And so I wanted to put it out there. I highly recommend checking it out if you have any sort of remote interest in this description of it. You know, if you go and watch Kyoyaxcloud's or Kyoyaxcloud's video as well, you know, I think you'll get a good sense of what the show is about if I haven't adequately explained it. And if you have any interest in it, I again recommend checking it out. If you are already watching it, you probably know what I'm talking about and why it is so fascinating and intriguing and you know, enjoyable. And so yeah, otherwise it'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.